So if you want to go to Exodus 32, Kenny, you can pull it up if you want to. Exodus 32, you can pull it up in the NIV, and we will read the whole chapter. Good? I didn't give many scriptures ahead of time. I wasn't exactly sure what we were going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading. When the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. "Come on," they said, "make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt." So Aaron said, "Take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me." All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Verse 5. Aaron saw how excited the people were, and he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, "Tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord." The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking. They indulged in pagan revelry. The Lord told Moses, "Quick, go down the mountain. Your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a calf, and they have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They are saying, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.' Then the Lord said, 'I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them, and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation.' But Moses tried to pacify the Lord his God. 'O Lord,' he said, 'why are you so angry with your own people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt with such great power and such a strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them in the mountains and wiping them from the face of the earth? Turn away from your fierce anger. Change your mind about this terrible disaster you have threatened against your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, 'I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven. I will give them all of this land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever.' So the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring on his people. Then Moses turned and went down the mountain. He held in his hand the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. These tablets were God's work. The words on them were written by God himself. Verse 17, when Joshua heard the boisterous noise of the people shouting below them, he exclaimed to Moses, 'It sounds like war in the camp.' But Moses replied, 'No, it's not a shout of victory, nor the wailing of defeat. I hear the sound of celebration.' When they came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and he burned with anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. Finally, he turned to Aaron and demanded, 'What did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them?' 'Don't get so upset, my lord,' Aaron replied. 'You yourself know how evil these people are. They said to me, "Make us gods who will lead us." We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt.' So I told them, 'Whoever has gold jewelry, take it off.' When they brought it to me, I simply threw it in the fire, and out came this calf." That always makes me laugh. Poof. Moses saw that Aaron had let the people get completely out of control, much to the amusement of their enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and shouted, "All of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me." And all the Levites gathered around him. Moses told them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each of you take your swords and go back and forth from one end of the camp to the other. Kill everyone, even your brothers, friends, neighbors." The Levites obeyed Moses' command, and about 3,000 people died that day. Then Moses told the Levites, "Today you have ordained yourselves for the service of the Lord, for you obeyed him, even though it meant killing your own sons and brothers. Today you have earned a blessing." The next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a terrible sin, but I will go back up the mountain to the Lord. Go back up to the Lord on the mountain. Perhaps I will be able to obtain forgiveness for your sins." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a terrible sin these people have committed. They have made gods of gold for themselves. But now if you will only forgive their sins, but if not, erase my name from the record you have written." But the Lord replied to Moses, "No, I will erase the name of everyone who has sinned against me. Now go lead the people to the place I told you about. Look, my angel will lead the way before you, and when I come to call the people to account, I will certainly hold them responsible for their sins." And the Lord sent a great plague upon the people because they had worshipped the calf Aaron had made. All that happened because at the very beginning it said, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. "Come on," they said, "make us some gods who can lead us." I think that God wants us to be patient in what he's saying to do. I think sometimes because we don't see, kind of like today, we got all of 10 people here, right? And so we think we have got to do something. We've got to do something because it just, things aren't happening and we're waiting. And I think God's just saying, keep waiting. Keep waiting. And in the right time, it will be released. And what happens is when we don't wait and we get into doing things ourselves, it ends up costing us. Moses had to go back up the hill, the mountain, to get a new set of tablets. So it ended up taking them twice as long as what it was supposed to. It cost people their lives, right? Whether it be physical or spiritual now. But it will cost if we get ahead of God. And so we have to just wait. I'm going to go into a couple other scriptures. We have to wait with expectancy that God is going to do what he said he will be faithful. He has to be faithful to his word. He has to be faithful to what he said he's going to do. I think sometimes we think that let me just rewrite what I wrote down. He was only delayed in the eyes of man. The people had an expectation of the time in which he was to return. I think sometimes we get an expectation in our minds of the order or the timing in which things should be done. Well, God, did we miss it? And so because we think maybe it's taking too long, we begin doing things in ourselves. Expectation is how you think it should go. Expectancy is a posture. Are you going to wait on God with expectancy or rely on your own expectations? When your expectations aren't met, are you going to worship and wait on God, or are you going to go somewhere else to fill that void? We are all created to worship something, and when our expectations aren't met, we tend to shift our worship to something other than God. So when we're waiting in expectancy, we're waiting with our eyes on God, worshiping him. When we have our own expectation of what should happen, we then begin to shift our focus off of him, and instead of it being vertical, we begin focusing horizontal and what needs to be done. What you do in that moment when your expectations aren't being met determines where your worship is. What you do in that moment when your expectations aren't being met determines where your worship is. Luke 8:40. On the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. That's where he went, and he ended up, Jairus came up to him, and then the lady with the issue of blood, and they were healed. Jairus' daughter was healed. And when he went across, the first thing it says in verse 40, it says, on the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. The NIV says, for they were all expecting him. They were waiting with expectancy for this Jesus to come and invade them. And they didn't leave. They didn't do other things. They sat there and they waited for Jesus to come and invade their life. We hate waiting, but God says to wait on him in Isaiah 40:31. Actually, if we wait on him, our strength is actually renewed. So we, especially in this culture we live in, we feel like we always have to be doing something, right? But sometimes God says, just wait. Just wait. And in that waiting, our duty, our response should be a posture of expectancy, of worshiping him. Worshiping him in expectancy. And if we just keep our eyes focused on him and not focused on the horizontal, and we focus vertically, then the things that aren't happening or are happening here don't affect us to the realm of when we're focused here, because we're focused on him, right? Isaiah 59:19 says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. So when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord raises up a standard. So if the enemy tries to come in or whatever to distract you, if your focus is on him, he raises up the standard, right? He lifts you up out of that flood. There's a new standard that he sets. If this was the floodplain here, and a flood comes in, it comes up to the floodplain, he raises the standard. All of a sudden, you're not flooded anymore by the enemy. But that's when we have to focus on him and keep a reverent fear of him. If you keep your posture right, the Lord will raise a standard against the enemy. And that's where we have to keep our posture of worshiping him, keeping our eyes on him in expectancy, because that's, I guess, one of the things that I've been struggling with here recently is, God, I keep hearing this, I keep hearing this, but I'm not seeing anything. And so my reaction is to not move maybe in what he's saying to move, because I haven't seen anything happen, right? But if he says to move, I have to move and be obedient with the expectancy that he will do his part in the timing that he says to do it, in the timing that he wants to do it. Does that make sense? If I'm obedient on my side and keep my eyes on him, then I just need to have the expectancy that he will do his part, which is hard to do because faith without seeing anything, sometimes it's hard to keep that faith. But faith without works is dead. So we have to have faith. We have to move in the work that he's saying to do, and then he will release in his timing what he wants to release. And, you know, I keep hearing all the prophets saying this is a time of harvest. And I think Chuck was even saying there about a 2-year, somewhere I heard about a 2-year period where God is releasing harvest. And I believe that. I believe that. Neil Lockhart came over and visited yesterday, and we were just talking a little bit. I think that he of course he has, issues like any of us, but I think he hears the Lord. Sometimes doesn't always, know if it's the Lord or not. But, one thing he said, he goes, I feel like the Lord keeps telling me, I keep hearing, this is the year. This is the year. And he's like, I know some people think it's got to be this big, long thing, but all I hear is 4 words, this is the year. And so, it can be a short thing. I said, absolutely. God can give you 1 word, and it's him. But I told him, I said, I believe that too. I believe this is a year that a lot of people are going to experience breakthrough, and we're going to see, this is the year where we're going to begin to see more of an outpouring, seeing the things that have been prophesied for years. This is the year. This is a turning point. This is new beginnings. This is a new thing just being released. So I'm excited, but we have to continue to have that expectancy, even though we don't quite see it yet. Amen? Yes. Passage in Luke was Luke 8, verse 40. Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him.
The statement before that was,
What you do in that moment when your expectations aren't met determines where your worship is.